I know it's a chilly morning, but we have to brace the cold and make sure that we face the day. Being a Tuesday morning, certainly there's still so much, that is left to us to tackle on this, time of the week. So as we do this, please walk me all the way to around 9:30. I have lots lined up for you. Like I have said, away from discussing what it is that we'll be discussing with the guests on board, we'll also later on get into the world of business. Tuesdays, we always look at matters finances. Let's talk about the economy in general, and we'll look at different sectors. And so today, we focus on the air travel industry and basically the aspect of tourism, and also later on just getting to understand how you can manage your finances when you're in the world of business. Certainly conversations that you do not want to miss. Before we get to that space, allow us to briefly look at what the papers detail this morning. We have the Standard newspaper, we have the Daily Nation, as well as the People Daily, and then we'll be shifting gears to definitely getting into the conversation that equally is important. Allow us to briefly look at some of these stories that have been captured, the front page of the Daily Nation, the front page of the People Daily, as well as the front page of the Standard newspaper, basically giving us an overview of what to expect in the course of the day, and equally a reminder on what has been playing out. Of course, it's not all rosy in Sudan. The cases of death continue to shoot up. By the time it was yesterday evening, we were at 100 people who had lost their lives because of the kind of unrest that is being witnessed there. Also getting the leadership of IGAD and, the global fraternity coming in to condemn this that is playing out there. Of course, trying to come on board with solutions to addressing that. A land CAS in gun drama over half an acre. A story captured on page 4 as well. Certainly that is quite unfortunate. This in the land tussle. Of course, Ngunjiri are not also finding himself in the right side of the law, and it's certainly a developing story of around 50 acres of land that is in tussle with a certain different family. He claims it's his, while the other family says it is theirs. Just what will play out in relation to this, and why does it have to go to levels where people are hurt because of the gunshots, as well as of course the pangas that they had. We'll certainly be following up on that as we also get to give you updates on the same, and perhaps get to understand what really could have informed that, and certainly the course of the law according the piece of land to the rightful owner. Safaricom crown top Kenyans brands, a story captured on the financial beat of the Standard newspaper, a story captured on page 2 of that Financial Standard. We certainly are looking at the trajectories that they have made over years, and perhaps could then be deserving of that title. High price of democracy in Sudan, a story captured on page 29, as well as I have started by saying it is not all rosy there. This as leaders are keenly having conversation in relation to how best they can come in to help Sudan quell that form of unrest. Server politics, the big gamble for Right Honorable Raila Odinga maintains that really he wants the key things that he has presented from day one addressed, including that of the opening of the server for purposes of getting authentication, or for purposes of getting to know just who won the presidential vote. An opposition leader has staked his political career, that is of the latest negotiations with the government, with a demand of opening the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission servers to authenticate who won the 2022 presidential election. And of course, the experts are arguing that in as much as this would play out, reality is that nothing can be done to overturn the process as it is. It was pronounced at the Supreme Court, having gone through the full cycle of the election, and therefore then the president stands perhaps up until 2027, where we're going to have another election. But as experts would argue, that would go a long way in making sure that we sanitize our process, and also just working towards making it better, that is the election process or electoral process. And as I have said, Evans Chebet wins a second Boston Marathon, as the first back-to-back Boston winner in 15 years. In set, Helen Obiri wins the women's race, that is after we followed up on these events yesterday. We'll be giving you more updates on the same. Remember, we had Dennis and Hans here in the morning, painting a picture of what the sports actions were like over the weekend, and as well enlightening us on what to expect throughout the week. Jebet Defense Crown Obiri Toast of Boston, a story captured on page 40, that is in the world of sports on the Standard newspaper. Briefly on the Daily Nation. Let's see what the Daily Nation has this morning. Fresh push to spare jobless graduates from paying interest on HELB loans. That's a story that on the back page. Certainly on the question of education, most of the times they will allude to this on the back page, and therefore, of course, these adjustments then would be necessary, because most of the students will tell you, most of the people who've gone out to a job market that is not quite fair have struggled to, be able to, of course, take care of the loans. That is the HELB loans, and it's not all been rosy. And as many would even say, it becomes difficult. Even those ones that have jobs, perhaps very little money that could allow them the chance to pay the loans, so that we also have other students to benefit from the same. So the adjustments then, of course, you could help yourself unpack this after going through the paper on the back page of the Daily Nation. Single runway haunts JKIA as flights suspended. Cargo planes take off aborted after bad strike, a story captured on page 8. And because we'll be talking about the question of tourism and air travel, I think I'll shelve this one for that conversation. That is at around 8:30 in the morning. And members of parliament, a new bid to block high county taxes. That is, if a bill passed, then KRA will collect levies for the devolved units. That a proposed law that is before the National Assembly is seeking to control runaway county taxes by requiring the National Treasury to oversee and block exorbitant levies that undermine the cross-county trade, as well as national economic policies, even as the bill has already drawn mixed reactions from governors as well as the senators. This is a story that is on the front page, expounded on page 4, and the conversation on how best to work on devolution is at the heart of this. And of course, the collection of revenue is equally crucial, just so we'd be able to see whether we get to a space where counties can fund their own activities and, of course, sustain their own budgets based on the revenue that is collected there. And it would be important to have then, of course, the taxman perhaps help in balancing the monies, and of course balancing as well the monies that are collected across, to make sure that there's the aspect of accountability, and equally on the question of taxation, which is key and which then the Kenya Kwanza government is keen on for purposes of the people to enjoy the benefits of what it is that they pay. Wedding bells, Honorable Love as members of parliament to get married for the first time. Well, it is interesting, is in the air in Kenya's parliament. Madeira Member of Parliament Eric Wamombi is set to tie the knot with Murang'a woman representative Betty Maina. Interesting times. We'll be looking forward to see how that pans out. Away from it, Kiraitu linked to IPP in costly power probe. Former Energy Minister Kiraitu Murungi and 2 ex-PSs, that is Patrick Nyoike as well as Joseph Joroge, linked to one of the IPP's members of parliament, are blaming for high electricity prices. A story captured on page 11. The most unfortunate thing is that, yes, the electricity price continues to shoot up, and this probe that is being conducted by members of parliament, Kenyans are hoping would be a probe that then gets us to a space where then we see the electricity prices going down, but equally, what it is that drains this aspect of Kenya Power then as well is addressed, so that then we get some level of making sure that this entity that enjoys or has enjoyed monopoly for quite a while then is making benefits, but not at the expense of the taxpayer. Harambes to collateral, well, the big headache of hospitals or hospital bills, that is from fundraising through mobile money, pay bill numbers, and social media platforms such as the WhatsApp, to surrendering assets as collateral to medical services providers. Kenyans are quite facing tough times as medical bills continue to rise sharply. A story captured on page 10. They'll tell you if there's anything that a Kenyan dreads today is that aspect of getting sick, because then the cost of medication is extremely expensive. This even as the government maintains that they will do anything in their power to make sure that there is a balance on the same so that all Kenyans are able to access medication. We're talking about universal health care and affordable for that matter. We can only bank on hope, and we see to it that the Kenya Kwanza government then makes sure to, at least get us adjustments that will be friendly enough for Kenyans to attain or for Kenyans to access, healthcare. That is one of the key stories, of course, that is on the front page of the Daily Nation, and I've shelved those ones. I am finding it hard to have my People Daily open. In the event that it does, we'll definitely be here to make sure that we update you on what it details this morning. But for now, allow us to shift gears and look at the stories that have been worked on by my team. Kenya's Evans Chebet successfully defended his Boston Marathon title. That is after finishing the men's category first, while his female counterpart Helen Obiri dominated the women's category of the race to be crowned the champion. Despite Kenya dominating the race, legendary athlete Eliud Kipchoge faltered for the third time in his entire career after he finished sixth.
All eyes on Eliud Kipchoge and the rest of the field now out on the course.
Kenyan athletes continued their world dominance over long-distance running after Evans Chebet earlier today successfully defended his Boston Marathon title after crossing the finish line first in a time of 2 hours, 5 minutes and 54 seconds.
27th Boston Marathon title.
Chebet, who won the 2022 New York City Marathon, claimed his third World Marathon Majors Series victory, while his compatriot Benson Kipruto claimed the bronze medal in the race, only 0.52 seconds off the pace.
Second after finishing fourth a year ago.
Tanzania's Gabriel Giai settled for the silver medal after finishing second in a time of 2 hours, 6 minutes.
Wakati mwingine kama weekend, mimi najiachilia.
Hata ukumbuki hii story. Nikifika watu wangu wakinipokea na kupokeleka.
Umeset the mood.
Nimeset the mood. Naweza kupokeleka. Nikitumai kwamba mzima popote pale ulipo, nikikukaribisha katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi. Jina langu Elizabeth Mutuku, na katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi tunakupa nafasi kutangamana nao kila siku ya Alhamisi kuanzia saa 1:30 kuendelea siku nyingine. Tutapatana papa hapa umjue kiongozi mwingine.
Jiunge nasi toka hapa hadi ufuoni mwa bahari. Meli yetu itakapotua nanga kwa uhondo ribo ya riwaya hii mwisho wa kosa. Monica.
It's early morning in Maralal. Start your morning informed, educated, entertained, and above all, know your country. From the beautiful plains of Samburu County to the skyscrapers of Nairobi, Morning Cafe certainly got you covered. Indeed, a beautiful place to watch and certainly a moment of understanding and knowing your country. Indeed, to the remotest parts of every county. Join me, Linda Alela, every weekday from 6 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
The diversity of Kenya's wildlife has garnered international fame.
This is a...
After the gunshots ceased, one man was left on the ground, writhing in pain from a gunshot wound, while a middle-aged woman was seen sobbing uncontrollably with a fractured arm. Chichi Josephine provides further details on this disturbing incident.
Land CAS and former Bahati Member of Parliament Kimani Ngunjiri had arrived in Kotom village at around 6 a.m, driving in his off-road truck and a tractor in tow, ready to plow a farm that has been at the center of a legal dispute. The land claimed by Ngunjiri forms part of a larger 560-acre land at the center of a court battle. Susan Murogi, who is in her late 60s, said that she confronted the CAS, who threatened her by saying that it was time they vacated his land, which she uses as a holding ground for her livestock.
Wakati niliona wakiaja kubomoa, ndio nilikimbia nikakuja. Kufika pale nikaja kupiga duru. Mheshimiwa akatoa pisto akanielekeshea. Akurusha. Sasa ndio nikakimbia, watu wengine wakakuja. Hiyo watu wakabomoa mpaka huko. Nikutana na yeye kwa pensi yetu tu hivi. Akanichukulia muti. Kunichukulia muti na mimi nikachukua mkono hivi. Alikuwa anataka kunigonga kichwa. Nikachukua nikajikinga hivi. Nilipojikinga akanigonga, ndio ilipata mkono nikaanguka chini.
Murogi's son William Ndungu, who was attracted to the scene by the commotion, arrived and confronted the state official, further worsening the situation as Ngunjiri fired 2 rounds, leading to a local one Lucas Onyango, who was on his way to the farm meters away from the scene of confrontation, being hit.
Kwa hapo tu maraundi nikasikia nduru, nikaenda hapo nikasimama mahali fulani kwa barabara hapo juu. Sasa kuna mheshimiwa mmoja anaitwa Ngunjiri akaanza kupiga marisasi hapo, akipiga ovyo ovyo. Sasa mimi nilikuwa nimesimama, risasi ikakuja ikanipata ikanigonga hapa mkono.
At the scene of confrontation, the police recovered 3 spent cartridges and a bullet head, which missed its target and lodged itself into the ground.
Kwa sababu kama alichaguliwa juzi na sasa leo amekuja kutuvurusha, sasa itakuwaje? Sasa ningeomba serikali iingilie hii jambo.
Tunaomba tu Ruto mahali huko tafadhali. Ruto unaniona na unanisikia. Pigania sisi haki yetu. Nimeishi nikienda kotini miaka 4. Kwa nini tunasubuana na wewe? Na hii ninajua ukweli na ninajua ukweli. Hii shamba si ukweli. Hii ni kuimba. Muliimba.
The area police commander declined to comment on the matter, with officers on his instructions showing journalists a Seska pistol and 8 rounds of 9mm ammunition, which Ngunjiri surrendered at Bahati police station after the incident.
Kama shamba ni yake, akuja na nini? Na documents zote. Alafu mama atoe documents za kuonyesha alipewa na goro na alijengewa hapa na goro.
Nasema no.
Chichi Josephine, TV 47.
Now, Nairobi Governor Johnson Sakaja has disbanded the Mama Lucy Kibaki Hospital Management Board and appointed a new board following a case of alleged medical negligence towards an expectant patient. The 8-member board has immediately taken over the leadership of the hospital that has been making headlines for all the wrong reasons.
For the better part of the day, Mama Lucy Kibaki Hospital in Nairobi's Eastlands area has been trending on social media platforms following a video of an expectant woman who is seen writhing in pain on the cold floors of the hospital. The video also captured some of the staff of the hospital who can be seen trying to break a door as the woman who resides in Jiru is surrounded by people who are trying to help her. The Nairobi County Governor Johnson Sakaja says the woman arrived at the hospital on Saturday around 5:20 p.m. She then underwent some tests that confirmed her baby had died in the womb 2 to 3 days before delivery, but the situation was not handled well. In a statement, officials from the hospital say locks on the doors jammed and the woman, who was from the ultrasound room, could not access the labor ward, and that is how she ended up lying on the floor. Following the incident, the governor has disbanded the hospital's board of management and appointed a new board. The 8-member board has immediately taken over the leadership of the facility that has been making headlines for all the wrong reasons, from negligence in handling patients, child theft to poor services rendered to the public. The new board is led by Dorcas Kemunto as the chairperson and Dr. Bernard Gituma, who doubles up as the secretary of the board and the medical superintendent. Dr. Emma Mutio, who was the medical superintendent, has been posted to Pumwani Hospital as a specialist. Sharon Baranga, TV 47.
And still on matters health, Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi has urged health workers not to go on strike as the government is working round the clock to restore normalcy in the counties. The CS said the government is facing an even bigger crisis than it seems, as the piling public debt haunts its every coin. Now, this even as Health Workers Union vow to proceed with their strike as planned should their members remain unpaid come Wednesday, the 19th. Zainab Mohammed with more.
Even as delayed civil servant salaries continue to cause panic, Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi has broken his silence on the matter, urging health workers not to go on strike as the government is working round the clock to restore normalcy in the counties.
This is an issue that is being discussed jointly with the National Treasury, and sooner than later we are going to make a more detailed pronouncement on how we intend to solve this problem. But I can assure you, we are not happy that there is a delay. We know that it's putting a lot of pressure on the county governments, and we intend to resolve that particular issue.
According to the CS, who painted a grim picture of an economic turmoil, the government is facing a financial crisis attributed to piling debt allegedly accrued by the previous regime.
One of the programs that the previous government entered into, the demand is that every January there must be a payment of 40 billion Kenya shillings. And then 6 months later, in July, to the same commitment, there must be another payment of 40 billion shillings. Now, these are commitments that have a primary charge on the consolidated fund. So you cannot run away from those commitments.
This even as Health Workers Union representatives vow to proceed with their strike as planned should their workers remain unpaid.
Today we are doing an audit because we are listening to our branch officials on the ground. By evening today, whichever county will have paid, we are going to remove them from the list. Tomorrow we are going to give another statement. If there remain 12, we'll still say the same. We are going to do the same on Wednesday before we progress. But on Wednesday, whoever will not have paid, they are not going to have any workers from there. Workers will stay at home and wait for facilitation so that they can be able to come to work.
The health workers who blamed the government for making it a norm to delay their salaries said the situation needs to get better for the country's essential service providers. Some counties, the union reps say, have heeded their call and paid their workers. However, others are yet to remit salaries for their members.
A few counties have paid, that's what I would say. But majority of them, like you have seen from the Council of Governors, they have not paid. And that's why even the Council of Governors was making a protest to the national government. Kindly release money so that we can pay our employees. So it's an issue of the national government is holding everyone hostage. But again, the county governments cannot be absolved of the same blame because even when they disperse the money, they go ahead to misappropriate the money and spend it on other things. So it's a cycle that they've been shown the game of delaying salaries. Themselves, when the money comes, they also delay and misappropriate it and allocate it to other issues. So they go pay off their tenders and they forget that they have employees to pay.
Some of the counties flagged off by the Health Workers Union last week include Kisumu, Mombasa, Nyamira, Kisii, Murang'a, Nyeri, Laikipia, Bomet, Nyandarua, Embu, Vihiga, and Taita Taveta. Zainab Mohammed, T47.
Thank you, Zainab, for that update. Now, controversial preacher Paul Mackenzie Ndenge and some of his 14 followers were arraigned in court, that is Monday evening, that is a Malindi court, immediately after he presented himself at the Malindi police station. And as Ronnie Regan reports, he will remain in custody to allow police conduct investigation.
Paul Mackenzie Ndenge was presented at the Malindi Law Courts and will have to remain in police custody for 14 days after the court revoked the bail of 10,000 shillings previously given to him.
For that reason, the court shall order as follows. Suspect number 1, Paul Ndenge Mackenzie, and a police bond that the court had earlier issued and directed that he be released pending the investigations is hereby cancelled. Number 2, suspects 1 to 7 to remain in police custody for 14 days pending the completion of the investigations.
Malindi Chief Magistrate Elizabeth Usui ordered the cancellation of the bond on the grounds that Mackenzie has been continuing with his activities in a farm at Shakahola despite the court's orders asking him to stop with immediate effect.
And unless the suspect, especially the first respondent, is held in custody, there is a likelihood of interference with the witnesses and a likelihood that more unlawful activities may take place. The suspects have not been charged yet. The matter is still at the investigation stage. So the court finds compelling reasons to allow police to continue holding the suspects that are before the court for more days until they complete investigations.
The police said earlier asked for 30 days to allow them complete the investigations, but the judge made a decision after rejecting the request by the public prosecutor and instead gave them 14 days to do so.
30 days is too much, so you take 14. Complete your investigations.
Earlier today, 7 more people were rescued from the hands of the pastor, who is said to force his followers to fast for 40 days until they meet Jesus.
Na saa hii ukiuliza na wale kuna vijana ambao tuliwaleta juzi wiki iliyopita, pale kama wameonyesha ishara ya kukimbia, wanafungwa kamba za nyuma na miguu. Wakifungwa sasa wao sasa kama pengine wanaweza kuninea hata kushikwa koo na kunyongwa na kumalizwa pale ndani. Kwa hivyo halafu cha kushangaza ni kwamba kama ni ugaidi sahihi watofanya pale ugaidi, kwa sababu hawa ambao tumewaleta sahihi wamesema kwamba juzi waliingia juzi na wamepokonywa kila kitu.
It has also emerged that whenever a believer dies, his or her body cannot be handed over to the family of the loved one, an issue that has raised many questions.
Na tulipotembea kwa kila kanyumba, kila kamoja tulitembea huko, tulikuwa tunaona kaburi 2 ama 1. Kulikuwa kumenyesha, kaburi wanaweza jua inaenda chini, inasingi.
The court also accepted the request for the exhumation of the 14 bodies, which are suspected to have been buried in a farm in Shakahola. Ronnie Reagan, TV 47.
Over 120 Kenyan businessmen have taken legal action by filing a petition in court to seek an injunction against the Director of Kenya Citizens and Foreign Nationals Management Services. And as Norbert Oduor reports, they allege that the government has been promoting and facilitating the influx of Chinese nationals into the country, which has adversely affected their businesses and the livelihoods of millions of Kenyans and their dependents.
The over 120 businessmen who have moved to court seeking orders to restrain the Director of Kenya Citizens and Foreign National Management Service from issuing permits to foreign nationals of China seek legal recourse to protect their businesses and livelihood from what they perceive as unfair competition and alleged violation of investment laws by Chinese nationals. In the petition presented before the court, the petitioners claim, and I quote, the Chinese companies and traders listed as the 14th and 61st respondents are operating unlawfully, and the cumulative effects of their businesses are undermining the objectives in the Article 10, 11, 21 and 43 of the Constitution to protect and promote economic and social rights of Kenyan citizens, end of quote. According to the businessmen who are part of the Indigenous Capital Protection Association, the establishment of economic activities by Chinese nationals has threatened the survival of their businesses. They claim that China Square, which imports and sells merchandise from Chinese manufacturers and distributors, has not been lawfully issued with an investment certificate by the authorities. The petition further claims that they have a right to development, and as a community of traders and as members of disadvantaged groups and individuals, this right to development is embodied in the preamble of the Constitution in the Article 1, 10, 12, 21 and 43 of the Constitution. In order to ensure the realization of the said right, the state and all state organs must comply with the command in the Article 21 of the Constitution, namely to take legislative policy and other measures to protect, promote and secure the economic social rights of Kenyan citizens. The businessmen therefore are requesting the court to alter the issuance of permits to foreign nationals from China and to stop China Square Mall from engaging in economic activities until an investigation by the competition authorities of Kenya is conducted and a report is filed in court. Represented by lawyer Kibe Munkahi, the petitioners have listed over 50 businesses operated by Chinese nationals in Kenya, with China Square, Lei Cheng, Bromance Trading Limited, a Bear Trading Company, and Yang International Trading Company making it in the top 5 companies in their list. The petition by Kenya businessmen against the director of Kenya Citizen and Foreign National Management Service raises great concern about the impact of the influx of Chinese nationals on local business and livelihoods. Norbert Oduor, TV 47.
And as the world commemorates World Hemophilia Day, it is disheartening to note that in Kenya there are still misconceptions linking the disease to witchcraft. Our reporter Wanji Sustin shares the story of Ben Musongo, a 34-year-old man from Nyamira County who was diagnosed with hemophilia at the age of 5. Ben reveals that he had to endure stigma and discrimination due to this misguided beliefs as he was growing up.
According to health experts, hemophilia has common features with the sickle cell anemia, but the disease is associated with the gum bleeding, bleeding into the joints and bleeding in the muscles and soft tissues. 34-year-old Ben Mosongo from Nyamira County is one of the hemophilia patients who was diagnosed with the disease when he was 5 years old.
Goti lilifura. Hiyo kufura kwake, then nikapelekwa Nyamira County Referral Hospital. Niliishi huko 6 months before nijue ni nini kinasumbua. So baada ya hiyo nilibidi nikawa transferred kwenda Kenyatta National Hospital. Hapo ndio nilienda nikajulia kwamba niko na hii condition ya hemophilia.
Mosongo shares with us his agony.
Kuishi na hemophilia si kitu rahisi, kwa sababu dawa yake ni expensive kununua, sababu vile niliwaambia dose moja ni 50,000 na kama saa hii vile niko sieti niko natembea na hizi machuma. Hizi chuma nimezipata 2020 kwa sababu I have a condition na niko na pseudotumor of which nilikosa dawa for a prolonged time.
It has been very taxing kwa sisi kutoka Busia na wagonjwa wetu kupeleka Eldoret kwa sababu hatuna hiyo hospitali Busia County. Kwa hivyo my appeal is that we open as many branches as possible.
And as the world marks World Hemophilia Day, health experts are calling for more concerted efforts to ensure the disease is understood, as there are many who believe that it's associated with the witchcraft.
Wameichukulia kama tabu. Hii ni kitu umerogwa, kwa sababu kugrow kwangu mpaka nifike hapa saa hii, wengi wamesema kuna tabu sikufanyiwa, kuna vitu sikufanyiwa, like nienda nifanyiwe mbuzi kachinjwa. Sasa wanaichukulia kama ni uchawi.
They have urged the Minister of Education to include the disease on schools' curriculums as a way of sensitizing citizens on dangers of the disease. Speaking after launching a hemophilia clinic at Bungoma Referral Hospital, County Executive Member for Health Andrew Amalwa stated that the clinic is so far taking care of 3 patients, further urging residents to embrace disease screening.
Tuko na wagonjwa 3 ambao wako na hemophilia. Hii ni ugonjwa ambayo damu haikandamani. Ukikatwa na kitu, damu itavuja kwa muda mrefu bila kustop. Kwa hivyo kuna dawa ya hiyo ugonjwa, na tunataka kuhamasisha watu kwamba wajitokeze, waje wapimwe. Hapa Bungoma tuko na vifaa vya kupima.
Hii ni segment ambayo imesaulika sana. Kuna wale watoto au watu wazima pia ambao wanakuwa na hii ugonjwa ambao wana bleed. Ile wakati mwingine wanatoka damu kwenye sehemu tofauti tofauti.
Wanji Sustin, TV 47, Bungoma.
Now, the association representing real estate stakeholders in the country is convening a 3-day conference at a hotel in Naivasha, bringing together its more than 200 members. The main agenda of the conference is to address the bottlenecks that have hampered the credibility of land buying and selling companies, which have been plagued by numerous con artists. The chairperson of the association, who is also the director of Maono Lands Limited, Mr. Kinywa wa Iratu, acknowledged the challenges faced by Kenyans who continue to suffer losses in land buying schemes. He emphasized that the conference will focus on addressing fraud and ensuring that licenses are issued in accordance with the law, or that is to prevent such predicaments.
Ni kubwa sana
tunakaa baada ya masiku kadhaa tunasikia kwamba kuna real estate ambayo imeanguka, na hii ndio tunataka kudeal nayo. Tujue sababu ni nini na tutafanya nini ili hata Wakenya wanaowekeza kwenye shamba ama kwenye nyumba wasiwe na wasiwasi tena. Kwa hivyo hii ni suluhisho, na tunajua kila Mkenya sasa atakuwa na amani wakati anawekeza kwenye mchanga ama kwenye plot ama kwenye nyumba. Mbeleni kuna watu walikuwa wako free, hakuna mtu angewauliza, hata wangenyang'anya Wakenya hawangekuwa na mtu wa kuwauliza. Kwa hivyo sisi kama wana real estate stakeholders tunataka tuhakikishie Wakenya kwamba hawatalia tena, na ni vizuri wanaponunua shamba ama wakinunua plot waulize kama mahali wananunua kama yeye ni mmoja wetu. Kwa tutaanza kupatiana leseni ya kuweza kukubalisha mtu kuweza kufanya kazi ya kuuza plot peli ama wale ambao wana mipango ya kunyang'anya Wakenya. Na niwaambie kama kuna njia yenye tutatumia pesa zao zirudi, sisi tuko tayari. Lakini sasa kutoka sasa wewe unataka kuwekeza, ni vizuri uangalie hiyo kampuni ama ni moja ya Association of Real Estate Stakeholders ili pesa zako zisipotee. Utapeli ni kitu ambacho hakiwezi isha Kenya haraka. Lakini kile tunataka kuambia watu ni vizuri kujua ukweli kwamba unaponunua shamba, na ndio tunajaribu kama sisi kukua pamoja, ndio unajua mmoja akiwa mmoja wetu, kwa sababu utapeli sio kampuni, ni mtu. Huwa ni uamuzi wa mtu binafsi. Tunajaribu kuelezea watu wale ambao ni watapeli, maana hata sisi huwa tunakuwa konde hata tukiwa na kampuni. Kwa hivyo tunajaribu tunaelezana mtu fulani huyo sio mtu mzuri. Kwa hivyo tukiwa pamoja tutajaribu tuweze kuinda majambazi walio kwenye hii mambo ya ardhi.
Well, we get back to this space where we are at getting to the conversation, yeah? And the gentlemen that joined me for this talk, very, very important and noble men in the country, equally those ones that have followed on the history, over time. That is the history of the country. Just looking at all sectors, we have a legal mind, we equally have an engineer. And this engineer I appreciate very much because I have read him in books. I have read, the kinds of struggles that he's put up as to the growth of democracy in the country. And some of these people that perhaps you will not know, but if they tell you the kind of struggle they have put up, if they tell you the kind of energy they have put up for the nation, you will certainly sit down to appreciate them. Engineer Alex Mwathi is here with us. Engineer, thank you so much. I don't know whether I've told you, I've read you a couple of times. I've read you in PLO's book, as well as many other books, and as well I've read your pieces, which I think should be appreciated. And that then means we have an able panel of discussing the matters that are playing out in the country. Equally a legal mind, Wakili constitutional lawyer, thank you so much for creating time to be here with us.
Thank you, Linda.
That is Wakili Ndegwa Njiru. Wakili Ndegwa Njiru, you know very well. I mean, if you have been following up in the, on the events in the country, that is legally, then you must have at least had an encounter or a chance to listen to Wakili. And perhaps today's subject that touches on, the conversation of the ICC, he'd be able to speak to, in the best way possible. That is, as we articulate whether indeed we want it to linger in the country or not, as well as very many other things that have played out. Gentlemen, allow us before we get to discussing the politics of the day, because when you see them here, it is largely about politics. Allow us to appreciate our athletes.
Oh yeah, it was good performance yesterday. Kenya and Boston Drying. We won both the men and women. The only thing
category,
that was really not good is that our man, Kipchoge, was not able to make it to the top.
Yeah,
he was number 6. There's a lot of expectation that he'll break the current world record that was set, I think, in 2011 or 2012. But he stood this time.
Yeah.
But congratulations to the team.
Yes, congratulations to the team, and he acknowledges that they are different days, and that should be appreciated. I think also there are lessons for us to pick from that. Wakili.
Yes, it's Linda. Good morning. We of course have to begin by giving our congratulations to the team.
Yeah.
The only unfortunate thing is that people jubilate about our team outside there. But for us who live among us or in their midst, we never see their value.
Yeah.
And of course, it's a lesson that we need to draw from how people perceive us. I wish we could all be that hygienic, that the way people perceive us in the world of sports would be able to clean and sanitize our other processes which are stinking, so that we can have a holistic approach on how people can appreciate us. Because this country is stinking. The country is stinking, the country is rotting, the country is in bad shape. Today I saw a very interesting cartoon, which I've just tweeted. The cartoon was, the economy was in a casket.
Let me open that tweet, your tweet.
Yes, I'm trying to...
it's fine, we'll look at it, The economy is it?
The economy was in a casket, and then the most interesting thing was the pallbearers. The pallbearer one was Mr. William Ruto, Mr. Gachagua, the governor of Kirinyaga County, the finance minister. And then I say, rest in peace. The pallbearers gave you a fatal blow.
Are we in such bad shape, really? And I mean, this is just a government that is coming in, really.
The way to indicate a country and its position is to look at the economic indicators. And when we all talk about economy, I don't think we concentrate on numbers. One of the things that we need to know is that economies of the countries are not made of broken 6-7.
Senior, I'm told that you have to fix your microphone a bit. So, Wakili, we come back to you.
All right.
And most of the supporters or sympathizers of the Kenya Kwanza government would perhaps argue that, Wakili has never been a supporter of this government, and therefore really we cannot bank on what it is that Wakili says, because most of the times we always come out across to as though to castigate the government, even when the government is trying its level best. It's only perhaps it's just months to them coming in, while we also argue that they have been part of the previous government. Could you argue that really we are in such a bad state?
Oh yes, we are in bad state, and especially when it comes to the question of the rule of law and the ability to develop the respect for our constitution. The country is in bad shape, like I said. In fact, the next funeral I think we shall be attending, now that we have begun, we have attended the funeral for our economy, should be about the whole idea of our constitutionalism, the whole idea about the independence of our institutions, the whole idea of Kenyan to move as a single entity of a unitary tire. Because the kind of the regime that we have is a regime that does not adore the rule of law, is a regime that does not believe in the existence of the institutions. For example, which institution in this country is working? All institutions are not working. Parliament is not working. Other independent institutions are not working. Why? Because the people who are at the helm of power do not believe in the constitution that is supposed to govern this country. Remember, they led a very serious campaign, anti-constitution campaign. So I've always suspected, and my suspicion is coming out clearly now, that Mr. William Ruto and Mr. Gachagua must have been sworn in with a document that they have never read. They must have sworn to protect a constitution which details they do not know.
But this is a document that we always refer to,
Wakili. And referring to is not understanding and comprehending and believing in the spirit of constitutionalism.
And it is necessary for a president too, and a deputy.
Yeah, you see, a president or any other person can just swear with a Bible or with the Constitution. Just like there we have good Christians and bad Christians. All Christians will say, I believe in the Bible, and they can never quote even a single verse in that
Allow
Bible.
us to take a short break on that very note, and perhaps come and get the view of engineer here, who is literally laughing at what it is that you say. Perhaps in agreement or not, we learn of the same after this break.
Wakati mwingine kama weekend, mimi najiachilia.
Hata ukumbuki hii story. Nikifika watu wangu watu wakinipokea na kupokeleka. Umeset the mood. Nimeset the mood. Naweza kupokeleka. Nikitumai kwamba mzima popote pale ulipo, nikikukaribisha katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi. Jina langu Elizabeth Mutuku, na katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi tunakupa nafasi kutangamana nao kila siku ya Alhamisi kuanzia saa 1:30 kuendelea siku nyingine. Tutapatana papa hapa umjue kiongozi mwingine.
Jiunge nasi toka hapa hadi ufuoni mwa bahari. Meli yetu itakapotua nanga kwa uhondo ribo ya riwaya hii mwisho wa kosa. Monica.
It's early morning in Maralal. Start your morning informed, educated, entertained, and above all, know your country. From the beautiful plains of Samburu County to the skyscrapers of Nairobi, Morning Cafe certainly got you covered. Indeed, a beautiful place to watch, and certainly a moment of understanding and knowing your country. Indeed, to the remotest part of every county. Join me, Linda Alela, every weekday from 6 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. All right, so we are back, and Engineer Alex Mwadhi is with us this morning, as well as constitutional lawyer Ndegwa Njuru. Engineer, we come back to you.
Good morning, Kenya. Good morning. We are in a blessed country, a country that is blessed with resources, a country that is blessed with a lot of brains, and the rest of the world has actually acknowledged that we have among the best brains in this world in terms of what we do in the rest of the world. Meaning that when we hear political rhetoric that try to make this country to be doomed, to be buried and all that, we should take that with a pinch of salt, so that we be able to separate political rhetoric and the facts that are there. The economy of this country has been in the doldrums for the last 6-7 years.
Yeah.
No one really had tried to fix it before. There's an attempt now to fix it.
Is it?
An economic decline doesn't happen in a day, it happens over a period of time. We kept talking about politics of unga. Unga was 230 shillings last year when President Uhuru Kenyatta was the president. Even with what you call subsidies, it's now at about 160 shillings and is available in the shops, which means that there's a bit of improvement. We know that we've suffered from a drought for the last 4 years. So to start saying certain statements is very, very unfortunate, very, very unfortunate. And while everybody has his opinion to make, I want to appeal to Kenyans to be hopeful about their country and to think about and look at the way forward. In the past, we've had, from 1963, this country has known laws as suggestions as opposed to things that people are supposed to follow. I can count up to 12 court rulings or court orders that President Kenyatta refused to obey, which means he never respected the Constitution. To an extent, in 2008, he brought in Raila Odinga as his co-president or his deputy, whatever you call it, which was not part of the Constitution. So the whole issue of political hygiene has been a problem in this country. And somebody needs to start fixing it. So to start saying that it's been done over the last 7 years, it's very unfortunate, and it's insincere for people who have the knowledge to be able to inform Kenyans.
Normally, people would look at the prospects, the projections, the odds, Do you think there's some tenets of, good signs with the current government? And I acknowledge that you started by saying that, yes, there's an attempt to fix the economy. Are you positive that this government...
I am very positive that this government will... The issue is that, and I've said this before, that the Greeks, the ones who gave us democracy, told us also that there are three categories of people, and they're saying this to make a point about the success or ability to be able to establish democracy in the society. That in every society there are three kinds of people. There are the idiots, the tribesmen, and citizens. There's no other category. The idiots are not people who are stupid or intellectually down. Idiots are people who are selfish, people who think about themselves only. People will criticize you for whatever reason, to take a chance to criticize you.
Yeah.
People who, when they're employed by the government, they steal from the government. You see the policemen in this country from time immemorial have been taking bribes on the roads. People that, when they're employed by the government, they go and steal from the government. People who are selfish to the core. And then the second group is tribesmen. Tribesmen are not necessarily ethnic groupings, but it's any grouping in a society that allows people to think selfishly, corporately, so that you think only about yourselves. Whether it's tribes, we are Kikuyus, we are Luos, we are Kalenjins, we are whatever, or we are Law Society of Kenya. And we look at ourselves at exclusion of everybody else, a lot of selfishness. Now, the third category is the citizens, people who think about their country, and people who think about doing good and ensuring that the projects work and everything works. Now, unfortunately for us, in my estimate, 95% are either idiots or tribesmen. And that's why we find ourselves where we are.
It would be worse if it's about the government of day falling in these categories.
Well, I do not think you are assuming that we are not. The fact of the matter is that the people who work in government, either this government, the previous government, or any other government that has been there, it's either constituted of idiots or the tribesmen. For example, I would wish engineer to help me categorize this one very unique scenario. The government comes up with, William comes up with a hype of, oh, we're going to give people some subsidy on fertilizer. Then, surprisingly and interestingly, the company that is granted this tender to supply fertilizer is one called Mashamba Something Limited, Eldoret. When you try to look at the transaction, and this was exposed by one of your sister media houses in this country, and it was there in the papers, you realize the kind of the money that was being pushed out of that account. An individual from a certain region, I don't want to mention the names, but I know Kenyans get it as right as I am, their Kenyans guess is right, goes to an account, bank account, withdraws 320 million cash. When you try to look at the traces of how the money went, then you know why the company and why there was a hype to give a 10 billion fertilizer subsidy. If you ask Kirinyaga people whether they have received this subsidy, even I myself, I have not received. And I'm a farmer, and I'm a serious farmer. I do farm coffee, I farm tea, I farm maize, I farm cows, all those things. And all those things, they are fertilizer-oriented farming. I have not received any. I went to the NCPB. For you to get fertilizer at the NCPB, you must be affiliated or you must be a shareholder of this country. Those that are not shareholders of this country are in big trouble.
Is it so?
Oh, yes.
And I would want to fall to Akili because, well, of course, as they would say, he's always trying to hit the government. But reality is that he's not the only one who's complaining about this. We equally had Kevin Osido here yesterday, who said he was up-country farming, but unfortunately, they've not been lucky enough to get this, fertilizer that they talk about. How then does
it was
the
a
government...
scheme calculated by the idiots.
But equally there are people who have benefited and they have acknowledged that they have.
They cannot even be 20%, Linda.
Is it?
They cannot be 20% of the population.
We have to be factual for a moment. But then again, we also have to address the grievances of a few crop of Kenyans that feel like really they have been shortchanged on this one. And also on the question of tribalism, because reality is that there's...
And now the tender was awarded.
Around and all, tender, how they are awarded, the projects, the procurements of all this.
If you keep in mind that analysis of the Greek and the fact that 95% of us are in the category of idiots and tribesmen, then you don't have to struggle too much because when you sit across the table, and we are angels and saints, and everybody is an idiot. It only is similar to you going to a hospital and they do an MRI and you refuse to accept the results of that MRI. It's a difficult thing to just sit down and start interrogating one item about subsidies, because the only knowledge I have of the subsidy, without supporting the government, I don't care. I know. I look at the facts as they are. Is the fact that the only place I know is a place called Loitoktok. I've been there a couple of times, and I know the farmers there got fertilizers. I don't know. I remember in the November period they got a fertilizer. I'm not sure about this current one because I haven't been there to check. In Nairobi, I can't claim to be looking for fertilizer. But bottom line, truth be told, that some of these things might end up to be a problem. People are complaining about the fuel subsidy. But then, in the midst of that, you can't be able to draw a huge conclusion about people. Because if the government plans a subsidy program that goes to the farmers, and at the bottom line, the people who are managing that decides to use it for their own gain, then it goes to your idiots and what you call tribesmen taking advantage of a system that is there. Now you can blame the people who came up with the idea to the end of this world, but the bottom line is they did what they needed to do.
These people, you're referring to, is definitely the government, and therefore the Kenyans are dependent on this government to make sure that, there's that aspect of protection. And the president, upon swearing in, says that, at the moment I put this Bible down, gone are the cartels, gone are the corrupt entities and individuals. So how can we not blame them? How can we not point a finger? How can we not question?
Linda,
how can we not ask?
Linda, please amend that statement that Mr. William Ruto has never spoken about corruption in this country. And so when he mentioned about placing the Bible down,
he talked about the cartels who are in the line of...
I have listened to him.
All right, cartels he did.
I have never heard him mention that
he did.
He mentioned
state
capture.
Sorry, on Tuesday I was in State House and he mentioned.
And I mean the other time, he said, if your uncle is a cartel, if your cousin is a cartel,
he must have been speaking privately.
Tell them. No.
He must have been speaking privately to the cartels.
Wakili, I'm also in the media industry, and sometimes I don't get to hear everything.
He might have been speaking privately to the cartels, because that guy never condemns corruption publicly.
He does.
When did he just put me one clip?
He does.
If you put me one clip,
you cannot be a president of a nation. You cannot be a president of a nation.
I challenge you, Linda.
All right.
So that my heart can.
I wish I was on the other side, so I can fix that. But I am sure my
let them fix that.
At least let them get them that. Let them get us that clip of what. Once I put the Bible down, the cartels. If your uncle is a cartel, if your friend is a cartel, if your brother, please tell them. I vividly remember that.
Okay. I grant it unto you.
But I will challenge you. Don't worry.
I grant it unto you. I still maintain that.
The man hates him with a passion.
Does he?
Is it a question of hate? When you hate, you crowd your mind.
I don't hate William. Why should I hate William?
A question of hate.
I do not know William personally.
So you have no reasons, no grounds whatsoever.
I have met him. We have not rubbed shoulders in any bad way. So I have no reason to hate him whatsoever. But I have the reason to have an independent thinking and analysis of the person who says he's my president. So if he's out there in public, he can't tell me that I don't have to scrutinize him. And honestly, I could be having some personal differences with Mr. Gachagua because he has once insulted me live on TV, but I don't have any problem with William. Honestly, I don't have any problem whatsoever.
But whatsoever, I think it's in your own right as a Kenyan to perhaps address and,
yes.
The
Now the tragedy is this, they go and pump out the fertilizer of 10 billion out there. It's supposed to be consumed by farmers. Remember, these farmers who are supposed to consume this fertilizer, and these farmers whom we are relying on to help us deal with the question of food security, they have no support infrastructures. For example, if you go to Kirinyaga, the farmer who is lucky will receive this fertilizer, but from there is no support infrastructure. There is no extension programs being undertaken. There is no proper crop husbandry being undertaken. The soils testing, they don't have any facility for soil testing in the country. So at times you don't even know whether this fertilizer that we are going to take for subsidy is what we actually need to feed our farms. So at the end of the day, you realize we are going to sink the 10 billion fertilizer subsidy, and we shall not have the bumper harvest that you are expecting. Why? Because the subsidy cannot be thought out in exclusion of other supporting infrastructures. If I have to subsidize, I have to know that the persons whom I'm subsidizing and who are supposed to benefit with this subsidy, they have been duly prepared for that benefit. We have all the necessary support infrastructure to consume that subsidy and for the subsidy to eventually yield the intended results.
And truly, we do not want to gamble with the subsidy. And to a large extent, I would agree with what it is that you say. And previously, we have witnessed, engineer, a scenario where, of course, there's been fertilizer that has been used and then we do not get to yield a thing because, first of all, maybe it was poisonous. It turns out to be poisonous. Maybe it wasn't meant for that kind of soil and all that. So, to a large extent, Wakili could have a point.
This I agree 100%, and this is the conversation we'll be having. The conversation is what is bedeviling us as a country, so that we can even take this opportunity on a national station like this to be able to make proposals and suggestions to those that are in office as to what needs to be done. Number one is the fact that from the time we got our independence, we had what we call extension officers in every area in agriculture. Those are gone. We had research institutions that used to do the soil analysis and all that in almost every district. They are all gone. So that in our mankiness, in our what you call it, idiotic way of doing the tribesman's way of doing it over the last 60 years, we have ensured that all the systems have collapsed. And to an extent that is very difficult to find an extension officer. One of the questions that I get involved in the mango production in this country, and our production for the last 5 years has averaged about 720,000 metric tons. And somebody, and I think it's the president himself, who asked me, how can we be able to increase this production? And I said, it's very simple. Just increase the yield for the mangoes, have the extension officers going down and increase the yield. And my argument was very simple. Our production in this country is 14 tons per hectare. The production for Malawi in Africa is 29. Meaning for the same acreage, you can double production.
You can double production, okay.
How do you do that? It's very basic, exactly what Wakili is saying. Have the extension officers come back, have people come to talk to the farmers and all that. But truth be told, in the initial planning for the fertilizer subsidy, we're calling it subsidy, but it's really subsidizing at a point where when the farmer is buying it at a cheaper price, not subsidizing the buyer or whatever. The plan, if Wakili knows it, was that there was going to be established a listing of farmers in every location.
And my assumption is that with the subsidy, it's a short term.
It's a short term.
Yes.
It's a 1 year thing to trigger up the production.
Right.
Those names were to ensure that we know who are the farmers in every area. And the administration people were given that to be able to collect. The other thing that was given as a requirement was to study the soil profiles so that farmers would be given the right fertilizer. And that's what I'm saying. Sometimes when you plan at the top there, and at the bottom the systems are already broken, it becomes very difficult for that to be followed, because we're supposed to study and be able to understand what are the profiles of the soil so that the fertilizer is given the right place. As to whether that is happening, I doubt it very much. Now, when he talks about the fertilizer is not even there, it means that even the studies were not done by the people who are supposed to do that.
Yeah.
As a people, we need to fix ourselves.
Yes.
Because we can't keep giving ourselves a position where the worst among us rule us. And if you look at the rhetoric and the shouting and the whatever that happens, it means that the worst among us rule us. And when we sit in a station like this and we start saying, oh, this guy is this way, this guy is that way, that guy is that way, we lose an opportunity to be able to move this country forward.
May I just add up on what Engineer has said,
because
Engineer has spoken about very important facts. People have not, the county governments have not appreciated why we devolved. Because the national government could be making serious attempts to make sure that they sort out food security problems by giving these subsidies. But at the support, you find that there is serious disconnect. For example, it is within the functions of the county governments to agriculture is one of the devolved functions. Now, instead of the governor coming up with that support team, the governor is there, the MCA is there, the senator is there, and the women rep is there to receive the fertilizer, which has already left all the way from Norway to Kirinyaga. The ideal situation should be that the governor is saying, okay, government, you have fertilizer, I have the support infrastructure. I have the extension officers here. So instead of him going to receive the fertilizer or her going to receive the fertilizer, he should have put into place the necessary infrastructures to complement what the national government is doing.
Thank you.
Look at it, look what is happening and what happened in Malawi. You know, Malawi was where we are. And Bingo wa Mutharika turned the whole idea of food security in Malawi. You don't even need to go to Malawi. You only need to go to Kitui and ask yourself, what is this that Governor Ngilu did when we had the dengue revolution? Because Governor Ngilu was able to change the environment, the food security in Kitui, and she had a bumper harvest of the dengue. What is it that she did? Why is it that those people who are good and who may think as straight as Engineer Mwadhi here will be perceived like we belong to a company or not a company? What are we saying? We are saying that this country is ours. William will have his 5 years or will have his 10 years and will go.
Thank you.
Any other person will have his 10 years, 5 years, or the number of years that God will give him. But this country will survive individuals. So it is our responsibility to sacrifice for this country by the best brains that we have and without stereotyping individuals. The reason why this country is moving as a disjointed unit is because of this balkanization, bastardization, bashing, and stereotyping of individuals. To the extent that if somebody has good brains like Engineer and is associated with UDA, I bastardize him. I'll not see what is good in him. If I am in whatever political affiliation I may be in, I am bastardized. Even when I speak and criticize positively, nobody will listen to that positive criticism.
That's the most unfortunate thing. But as we all acknowledge that, it's an individual push to make sure that we have a better country.
Yes.
At what point then do we put
allow me to push this on to Engineer also to tell us.
Yes.
Why was it a thinking of a national government that we should now start appetizing ourselves towards maize coming from Zambia? What is it that Zambia can do or was doing that we ourselves cannot do?
Have not done. Okay.
Let's agree that within the government, and knowing that the distribution of people that I've told you, the idiots, the tribesmen and the citizen, and the fact that I don't think we can debate as to what our percentage are, our thinking, our action and all that. It means that people will find themselves in government that has no ability to fulfill the role that they have been given. And this is not starting now. It's been there in the past. We've seen ministers who did not know exactly what they are doing. And for Lintuli, it was extremely unfortunate for a CS to be able to speak like that. In fact, some of us in our social media were requesting the president that it's time that you did a reshuffle. Kick the guy out.
Is it not too early?
He doesn't know what he's doing. Okay. So if you don't know at the beginning, how can you know at the end?
Is it just
you're giving somebody to give food security for this country who has no clue about agriculture,
right, or
how agriculture is done. To an extent, suggesting even I doubted whether he knows any mathematics. And he's Kenyan. So the fact that he's yes doesn't cease to be Kenyan. When he talks about I'll import at 40 shillings maize, and even if it comes to 80 to be still okay for me, he doesn't know that a 2 packet of unga takes about 2.5 kilos of maize, which means that if you're buying at 80 shillings, then you're saying you're going to bring the unga at 230 shillings.
Yeah.
To an extent that yesterday we had a scuffle where the CAS for lands were shooting people because of a land dispute.
Yeah.
I'm saying that we'll always find these kind of characters who mess up even when there's a good plan.
Is it not on the extreme? And I'm asking this based on what one of the people who's watching is asking. He says the biggest mistake that this government did is to reward loyalty oblivious or overlooking the importance of credibility.
Can I tell you something that whenever you bring engineer to this forum, there's always very good thinking that goes into the debate.
Yeah.
Very substantive and informative thinking that goes. Very rich thinking. When I was on the way driving, I was trying to do a SWOT analysis. Why William's popularity is declining at the midst of the promises that he gave. The man meant well for this country. But the delivery team that he has is the one that has completely let him down. Because the entire cabinet, perhaps with an exception of Minister Kidiki, the entire cabinet is a moribund.
Is it?
The entire cabinet is dysfunctional. The entire cabinet does not understand its mandate. The entire cabinet is a team of showbiz.
If it was functional to the satisfaction of...
And I realized, I told you I was doing analysis. When Kibaki came...
What would they be doing?
When Kibaki came in 2002, remember, he got ministers from parliament. That parliament still had very new, fresh bloods that had come in, yeah? But when he went to constitute his ministries and his ministers, he never went for those greenhorns who had just entered parliament. Whether you are a doctor of philosophy or doctor of agriculture, Kibaki never looked at you. He looked at those guys who have some bit of institutional memories on how a country is run. When he gave the seat of, he may not have performed the expectations, and I'm not saying that they exceedingly performed, but at least they pushed this country forward. He looked at those individuals who have been in government previously, and whom he thought that these guys have been in government, and the government has this philosophy of what they call the institutional memory. They may help him to push the country forward. The biggest misdoing with the current constitutional setup is that the president is not granted that opportunity of looking at individuals who have the capacity to deliver. Why? Because when we go for elections, the president is held hostage. Even as he campaigns, he's still held hostage. People holding by the neck.
The loyals.
The aspect of the loyalty. To the extent that the aspect of the loyalty mutilates the opportunity or the ability of the president to give the right job to the right person.
Can that really pass? Can he be excused for that?
No, he can't. He can't be excused for that.
Let's come back and respond to that after this break.
Okay.
Thank you.
wakati mwingine kama weekend mimi najiachilia.
Hata ukumbuki history. Nikifika watu wangu wakinipokea na kupokeleka.
Umeset the mood.
Nimeset the mood. Naweza kupokeleka. Nikitumai kwamba mzima popote pale ulipo, nikikukaribisha katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi. Jina langu Elizabeth Mutuku. Katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi tunakupa nafasi kutangamana nao kila siku ya Alhamisi kuanzia saa 1:30 kuendelea siku nyingine. Tutapatana papa hapa umjue kiongozi mwingine.
Jiunge nasi toka hapa ufuoni mwa bahari. Meli yetu itakapotua nanga kwa uhondo ribo ya riwaya hii mwisho wa kosa. Monica.
It's early morning in Maralal. Start your morning informed, educated, entertained, and above all, know your country. From the beautiful plains of Samburu County to the skyscrapers of Nairobi, Morning Cafe certainly got you covered. Indeed, a beautiful place to watch and certainly a moment of understanding and knowing your country. Indeed, to the remotest parts of every county. Join me, Linda Alela, every weekday from 6 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
The diversity of Kenya's wildlife has garnered international fame.
This is pellets that we give to the tourists, the giraffes. We ration because we don't want the giraffes to eat too much of this. We want them to have more of the natural browse.
We may not always get the opportunity to go out to see the wildlife, but you will never miss the opportunity to see it from the comfort of your couch.
This is home to animals that have been found out there either injured, abandoned, or confiscated from people who are holding them illegally.
Only on TV47 Wildlife, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m.
Disability is a club that anyone can join.
I live with special needs. It means I have a limitation. There are things I can't be able to do personally myself.
And in our journey to talk about disability, we tell the stories of those with disabilities and even sit with specialists to understand what it means for those affected directly and indirectly.
Everybody's life, mine has also been faced with ups and downs.
If it becomes a self-stigmatized thing where you feel like you are judging yourself too harsh, you blame yourself, and you perceive that it happened because you failed.
Join me, Zainab Mohammed, on Beyond the Limit every Saturday at 7:30 p.m.
An entrepreneur is defined as someone who has the ability and desire to establish, administer, and succeed in a startup venture along with the risks entitled to it to make profits.
I'm a professional financier with a professional paper in banking. However, for fashion, it's something I've always loved ever since I was small.
It started as a baby business. It was all about, you have your machines, the haircuts, wear the heads, bring the scalps.
We wanted something that would remind us about prayer every now and then. So the moment you mention Talit, we always think about prayer because Talit Cakes is founded on prayer.
Get to learn.
Yeah. We're back, yeah? We're back on air. Looks like the system is not in favor of me. They might need to fix that so we know that we are on air. But all the same, here we are. Engineer Alex Mwathi, as well as the constitutional lawyer Ndegwa Njiru. And therefore, to imagine that you are going to come back to the Kenyans and tell them, you know what, I was curtailed, I had no choice, I had my loyalists, I had to work with them. Even the political laws, and you are a student of political science, you are told those ones that are your friends are the ones to drop first when you get there, because they'll be the first ones with that knowledge of you to pull you down.
From a political point of view, excuse me, I would agree with Wakili that when you go through a campaign and you have people who are supporting you, that you need to give them a chance. You need to give them a seat on at the top front, what do you call this table? The high table. And that's what the president has done. And it's done in the past. When Kibaki came into power, he had to draw from the people from the coalition that they formed. You remember the NAC coalition. And he made them ministers. And as soon as they became ministers, it became confused. As a matter of fact, there was more disconnect then than it's now. Because now that was real in terms of fighting for position, angling for position, and preparing for the campaign for 2007. And it was cacophony all over. Immediately after that, you started having scandal as the Anglo-leasing with the greenhorns. He said he never picked the greenhorns. People like Murungaru, who was just picked from nowhere and made minister. There are a couple of them like that. But Kibaki had one sense, to realize that he had a political process to run, and he has an economy to run. To an extent, the political system was run by these characters who fought in every opportunity, and they never even had cabinet meetings. But he created what we call the National Socio-Economic Council that came up with the Vision 2030. And he came up with a couple of PSs that were very powerful at the time that he was working through. And this Economic Council was made up of captains of industry and some minds from Malaysia and some minds from Singapore as part of that team. And this team faithfully met every once a month, and they were free to think. And they were just to present to the president what they thought, and of course internalize it and made sure that the whole thing was followed. This group helped him. When the current president came into power, he also appointed a team. The unfortunate thing, and I can say this without missing any words, is that he made the chairman of that group an activist, David D. And activists will not help you move forward. Activists are known to do Twitters and posting and criticizing everything that they see, including the things they do themselves. To an extent that is a difficult thing, in my mind, that cannot progress. And that's, for me, is the biggest undoing. So you go to reward, but you go to reward smartly. You go to reward by ensuring that the people came are the ones that helped you to run.
Forget about even the political bit of it. If we're talking about the manifesto, if we're talking about the economy, which is what the current government, ran with as a campaign tool, they will tell you that the crafters of this very model that they were talking about are the Ds of this world. So how then do you go and install a different person, a person who's not worked on this very document then to help you implement? Just how possible? How then can he be able to run away from the Ds of this world?
I really sympathize with Ndi because he has now become an object of attack because of speaking the truth. It doesn't mean that if you're working with a certain system,
you agree to,
then you should become mum and you should see no evil or hear no evil. The unfortunate thing that did that has now rubbed feathers the bad way is that he exposed government and said the obvious, that this government is extravagant.
Well, he says all over.
He's
over time and all over.
No, he spoke just
and he
the other week.
acknowledges that yes, even in this
he spoke
one,
just the
we have
week.
the same problem.
And I am not granting any other regime. All regimes are wasteful. They invest in wasteful investments. But now, it is a high time that the person who is sleeping in the house comes out and says, the house is leaking. So that then we are able to mend where the problem is. If my wife realizes that the house is leaking and she comes and tells me the house is leaking, I cannot say that she has now started becoming an activist in my marriage and then I need to kick her out, I need to replace her. Even if I replace her with another person and I have not mended the leaking roof, it will still continue leaking. So my thinking is, instead of castigating Ndi, we need to think and put some bit of thinking on what is he saying and how can we minimize this wastefulness. For example, how many billions of monies have been spent on Thanksgiving prayers days or whatever they may be referred to? How many? Every time there's a prayer thinking that Thanksgiving here and there. You see, every Sunday we are running helter-skelter here and there, and many other wasteful processes. The other day we saw from the paper that vehicles for the Porsche and luxurious vehicles were being bought for billions of shillings. And then you ask yourself, is this really important? I listened to the president of Zambia the other day, or is it Zimbabwe, Mnangagwa? It was Mnangagwa, I think so, the crocodile. And he was saying, we must become good managers and good stewards of the resources of this country.
But it's one thing to say, how much is Mnangagwa himself doing?
It's Zambia president.
Sorry, Zambia. I think it's Zambia
president.
president. His own was speaking about this. And then he was saying, why do I need to buy new vehicles?
Zambia.
And there were vehicles that the previous regime was using. What we have not cultivated in this country, and it's not just this regime, it is we Kenyans, is a problem that we Kenyans have. We have not realized that once you're elected, you do not become a master. You become a servant. You become a trustee of the properties and the resources Kenyans have bequeathed or bestowed on you. Those properties do not become yours. So until we cultivate this spirit of stewardshipness, shepherdness, trusteeshipness, until we cultivate that spirit of being a trustee and a trustworthy trustee, will not move this nation forward. Even if William exits from office today, and another regime comes, and we do not change our mindset and realize that we have a country to govern and a country to pass over to the future generation, will not change any course. Even the next regime will still bury the economy the way William is burying it today.
How we wish that this is not the actual, condition of the country, and perhaps trust in what it is that Senior says. At least he was in State House and therefore can confirm that, there's that goodwill.
There's goodwill. Suffice to say also that when we have a debate like this and a name is mentioned, it's not about that person. It's about the process and the system and the office.
Yes, that's correct.
So let's correct this idea that I mentioned D because it's being verified. I don't even know whether he's being verified. I was bringing him in my opinion, in terms of his ability to be able to lead that group that is supposed to be a National Socio-Economic Council.
And largely they've been faulted for not predicting
anything. Yeah.
And
so that's the issue. I don't know he's been verified. Verified for mentioning that the government is wasteful. We know that's a fact. We've always said that Uhuru Kenyatta admitted that they were stealing 2 billion shillings a day. They were, because he was the head of the government. 2 billion shillings a day, that's a trillion shillings a year. We used to get an evaluation from William Ruto as to whether that has come down to maybe $1 billion. And I'm just hoping that it has come to $1 billion so that we can save 500 billion shillings. The point is, it's not the individual, it's what he's supposed to be doing. Whether he's mentioned about that, I know one of the key things about leadership is to be able to find solutions. Leaders are not in the job of looking for followers. They look for creating leaders. To an extent, a leader must look for solution. So a person who walks out of the house and says the house is leaking to the rest of the world is not a leader. A leader is someone who looks for something to block that leakage. Yeah. So if my wife, he gave an example of wife running out, then I have a big problem. Yeah. I've not created good leadership in her to be able to know that these are a problem that we need to solve. Okay. So that if there is an extravagant expenditure, how do we cut that extravagance? Telling everybody doesn't help. If you tell Wanjiko, somebody Soila in Loitoktok, somebody in Rift Valley, Viambo in Nyanza, that this government is very wasteful. And you are in the government. What do you expect them to do?
What do you expect for them to do?
If you reach a point where you have told them and they have refused to hear, stop being selfish, get out, and then talk about it. Don't talk about it when you are inside. Because you are there so that you can solve that problem.
CAS for lands, and then drama. And not just drama anywhere, but in the space of lands.
It's a very, very unfortunate. I mentioned that in passing. It's a very, very unfortunate that that one can get to a level where they get annoyed to an extent of getting a gun out, and just because you have a gun and you have in front of you a peasant farmer. I gather she's about 60 years old, peasant farmer who is struggling, and you're trying to shoot. It's, you know, these are things that you hear, and if you don't see the video, you want to say, no, it didn't happen. That didn't happen. That didn't happen. And I think he needs to be. I think he needs help. He's sick. He needs help.
Is it? He's not making it any better for the government, for the current regime.
Linda, it's only that this guy overreacted. The majority of those people who are in government, like I said, unfortunately, behaves like him. I'm very sure there are some cabinet ministers, if they were subject to the same situation, they would perhaps would have reacted the same way. I don't want to mention names, but we can obviously be able to locate them. Whatever Ministry of Trade, whether you're in the Ministry of Trade or wherever you are, I know there are so many of them who would have reacted that way. And the reason why William is struggling is because his team is not instilling confidence. His team, his dream team, is not instilling confidence, is not inspiring people, is not giving people hope. Yeah, you know, the hope that people had during the times of the campaign is dwindling.
And that would be my question. What happened therein? Because if this is the very same team that has helped him to garner the presidency, then
you remember this guy, the Mheshimiwa Ngonjiri. If you trace back and look at his utterances,
quite unfortunate.
During those particular times of the campaigns, they were unpalatable, unspeakable, unthinkable. You could not even imagine that a grown-up of his age, not even status, because I don't think that he has status, age, by virtue of age, he could not utter those words. So now you come and reward him because he was at the forefront of insulting Uhuru, and you give him such a crucial ministry of lads. What comes into his mind is, now I'm the big boss, nobody else can triumph over me. Any person who thinks that he can silence me, I am the big boss.
It's now time to get.
And not just that, I even have a seska. Okay. So the question here is, how can you inspire and breathe hope to Wanjiko with such kind of individuals? My thinking is a high time we start cleaning the house. And we just start cleaning house from the farthest corner. Not si hapa mbele peke yake, the farthest corner, mpaka mvunguni mwa kitanda. Lazima tuiname, tukubali kuinama, tufagie nyumba ili nyumba iwe safi.
Do you foresee a reshuffle?
A reshuffle will not be sufficient.
Okay.
Actions must be taken against an individual like this one. Criminal steps must be taken. But the question is, who is to take it?
Good question.
Can Hajiri do it? Can he have the guts?
Can he know it?
Unfortunately, our memories are very weak as Kenyans. Our memories are extremely weak, to an extent that is a criminal act, in my opinion. I don't know how the DPP and the IG will interpret it. Shooting an innocent people, for me, is criminal. But we know that we have created a culture over the last 60 years, and I have to keep repeating this, because we have to stop at some point and face it as individuals and stop castigating Ruto and individuals and say that we as a people have fallen short, that we have accepted nonsense as reality as a people.
Exactly.
It's not Ruto. Ruto is just following a script that has been there. To an extent, when did someone in a position of this did a criminal act like that and was jailed? We don't remember. The only politicians and senior people in this country who have been jailed are people who are opposing the government. You Marine Serenay of the 80s, and you can come closer. Raila Odinga in the 80s being held incommunicado for whatever reason. Anybody who was with the system, they have done gross things and they have been let free. To an extent, the matter will go to investigation and this man will be scot-free. Unfortunately, because we've created that. Yes. And the more we spend our times, saliva coming out of our mouths, talking about individuals and taking positions, this will continue as a country.
Linda.
Until a point where as a people we must stop and say, look, who are these citizens, the 5%? Can we give them an opportunity to rule this country? To give us a forward? Because Singapore did not happen. Singapore in 1965 was at our level in terms of economy, $250 per capita income in 1965. We were at 260. We had systems that were working in this country. They didn't have, because they were kind of a colony of Malaysia and China.
Yeah.
But this man comes, Lee Kuan Yew, a benevolent dictator, and he puts his foot down and says enough is enough. And he asks himself a question. At the end of my leadership, will I be one of the richest men on the world and my country poor, or will my country be rich and I be rich in that country? He chose the second one. Yeah. We've always chosen the first one. And that's why we are quicker to castigate, we are quick to criticize everything that happens. So to an extent, we even forget to see the goodness in anything. So this man will be free. Okay. Because we have created a system and a culture that allows, if you are appointed into a particular position, then you are kind of immune to the realities of life.
Let's allow it to go through the process.
But he's making very serious submissions. And those are the submissions.
It's a developing story, so let's see.
No, it's not just about him.
We have seen it happen in the past.
It's about the institutions.
Look, sorry, Wakili, just give me an opportunity. Do you remember during the campaign, someone who shot someone else?
Yes, we remember.
Where is he?
Well,
he's in parliament. He's still in parliament. Yeah. Do you remember someone who was jailed for 6-7 years? Yeah. Where is he?
Parliament.
In parliament. What does that tell you? It tells you that nothing will happen. And do those people belong to? All those people belong to Ruto's side?
No.
Are there Azimios who are mandamanoing from next Monday, castigating those ones? They're not. It's a culture we have developed.
And whenever you bring engineer here, I told you there is good thinking. Because there's objectivity in the debate. You see, and I am a strong believer in institutions. The other day, when there was a seemingly truce between William and Raila, the first thing that Azimio demanded was the release those individuals who have been arrested and charged.
Which they were.
What happened next? Haji goes and enters an ole prosecute. What does that tell you? It tells you that that institution of the DPP is an institution that is there for political machinations. It is not an independent office. Because what Haji should have said, no, I have a case before these individuals, irrespective of their political affiliation, allow me to run the full cycle. If the court finds them guilty, they'll be convicted. If the court finds that they're not guilty, they'll be acquitted. But what do? We allow politics to short-circuit our institutions. But I pity with Haji. If he was to defy that directive, the next thing that would have happened to him would have been that we start commencing his removal. Now, to save his job, Haji has to leak whoever is giving instructions, the boots of whoever is giving instructions. And I'm not blaming William peke yake. Because even in those guys in Azimio, we have Wakungu. Wakungu is a jailbird, 69 years, supposed to be serving prison. He goes, presents himself for an election, and is elected. What do you think?
Waluke?
Sorry, Waluke, sorry. It's called Waluke, I'm sorry. Pardon me, please. Waluke. So what happens? What happens is, we have shown the middle finger to the courts that convicted this guy. We have shown the middle finger to the office of the DPP. We have shown a middle finger to the investigating arms of government. So we are not breathing confidence to these institutions.
Is that why we go to the ICC?
One, fortunately, being an engineer, I read. And I've read this Rome statutes. And I know people are parading, people should be taken to ICC. But the matters before us are not ICC matters. To an extent that our salvation is not finding a foreign master to rule over us. Our solution is to stop and ask ourselves, what do we want as a nation? Which direction do we want to go? And speaking to the Wanjikos of this country, to ask yourselves, when you went to vote last time, did you vote the mind or did you vote the emotion? Did you vote people who are to change this country, or did you vote for people who make you feel good? To an extent that you actually left your brains at home and went to the voting to just mark Azimio, UDA. Because you could have had a UDA fella was very good vis-a-vis an Azimio person, but then because you left your brains at home, then you just ticked UDA or you ticked Azimio. So ICC for me is not and will never be a solution. When the last time the famous 6 was taken there, and you remember 2 of them were dropped immediately. The Sang and the police commissioner then was dropped very quickly, and the rest didn't stand. Was very simple reason of the framework of the ICC. And I'm sure Akili, if he was to give the detail, will give. That code looks at organized crime against humanity. So there has to be a command system that organizes and plans for crimes against humanity. If you don't have an organization and the leader is the one that is supposed to be held most responsible, then it can't happen. When people mandamano and the police go and shoot someone, where do people sit down and organize that? Or how can you be able to convince a court at that level that he can do that? The solution is in us waking up, smelling the coffee, and deciding what we want for our country. Our country, I said earlier, is endowed with everything, but we must stop our idiotic ways and our tribalistic way so that we can be able to look at issues for what they are and look for solutions for those issues.
ICC. One, I have 2 analyses. That the reason why people feel that the ICC is the only solution is because people have lost confidence in these institutions. I want a situation whereby if I am suspected of having committed a crime, irrespective of my status, I am charged. And the institutions are allowed to execute their constitutional mandate without any interference, irrespective of whom you are. Before I go to the ICC, permit me to remind you that immediately Kimani Ngojiri was appointed the CAS. The next thing that happened is his daughter, who was facing some corruption charges, were withdrawn. Do you remember? And if you look at that network of the procurement, she is in the middle of it. But she was plucked out because the father has become a CAS. You therefore become immunized. So,
Wakili, is it that really, or generally, the right route to the law is, employed in this, and there are justifications as to why some of these cases have been dropped from the DCI level? I have heard Wakili, who has been representing some of these individuals, like Aisha Jumo, speaking to this matter, and we also do not want to have, cycles and cycles of court cases that really do not get to yield a thing.
No,
well, they say that justice then, of course, or perhaps this would grind slowly.
If it is not for me to make a determination, you see, before the DPP charges, he gives his opinion and his decision to charge in writing. And before he charges, he has to put his legal mind into function to see whether I can sustain this charge. If it cannot sustain the charge, he should not charge. So, but the fact that you have now decided to charge, you have convinced and formed an opinion that this charge can be sustained. Then the only person who can determine whether the person is guilty or not guilty is then another institution called the court. What we are doing, we are not giving our institutions an opportunity. By that failure, therefore, people lose confidence with those institutions. And that is why you realize that people will appetize towards the ICC. Then the question of the ICC is this. Have we reached the threshold? That would be the question. I believe maybe we have not yet reached the threshold. But the question is, how many deaths that are too many for us to warrant us invoking a repressive mechanism? How many people should die so that we realize that we need to repress this? To me, every life is worthy, every life is precious, every life is sacred, every life is sacrosanct, every life is indivisible. So the extent of the indivisibility of life, we must be able to protect these lives at any given time, that no life should be lost and no property should be destroyed. Right. Either by government, by state actors, or non-state actors like the demonstrators. Nobody has a right to kill somebody, and nobody has a right to destroy the property of an individual. To the extent, therefore, that people have died, and there is attribution of these deaths towards the police, then if there was some steps that have been taken to show that repressiveness and retribution has been taken, or has been factored in, nobody would be thinking about the ICC today. Remember, the ICC has what we call the complementarity jurisdiction. It comes to complement where the state or the municipal courts or systems, criminal justice system has failed, or where there is unwillingness to prosecute or to put the justice criminal system into motion. What has happened today with the pronouncements of Mr. Gachagua is that they have completely shown that even that one death, 2 or 3 or too many, have not been accounted for. The criminal justice system has not accounted for that one death. So the question is, then in the event that we are there and this process keeps on aggravating, the big brother will not shut his eyes. But I'm simply saying that what Azimio was telling Koome, that Koome, you are a state servant. You must execute your functions within the 4 corners of the Constitution. If the 4 corners of the Constitution says that an individual has a right to demonstrate, then you have no right or power whatsoever to come and curtail that right. Number 2, you demonstrators, if you're being told that you must peacefully demonstrate, you too, you're not alpha and omega. You must demonstrate within the 4 corners of the Constitution. And to the best of my knowledge, I think that has been happening. Now,
allow us to take a short break and then come back on that. Perhaps also understand when you say Big Brother must, sometimes come in to complement what we have not managed to do. Big Brother has been blamed at some point, and we have seen African countries saying that, we want to exit this because they treat our cases with bias.
African countries are the biggest are the biggest machine of creating atrocities. To the Africans themselves,
all right.
They don't want to be accountable.
Okay.
It's not just a Kenyan situation. It's an
African situation.
Wakati mwingine kama weekend, mimi najiachilia.
Hata ukumbuki history.
Nikifika watu wangu wakinipokea na kupokeleka.
Umeset the mood.
Nimeset the mood. Naweza kupokeleka. Nikitumai kwamba mzima popote pale ulipo, nikikukaribisha katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi. Jina langu Elizabeth Mutuku. Katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi tunakupa nafasi kutangamana nao kila siku ya Alhamisi kuanzia saa 1:30 kuendelea siku nyingine. Tutapatana papa hapa umjue kiongozi mwingine.
Jiunge nasi toka hapa hadi ufuoni mwa bahari. Meli yetu itakapotua nanga kwa uhondo ribo ya riwaya hii mwisho wa kosa. Monica.
It's early morning in Maralal. Start your morning informed, educated, entertained, and above all, know your country. From the beautiful plains of Samburu County to the skyscrapers of Nairobi, Morning Cafe certainly got you covered. Indeed, a beautiful place to watch and certainly a moment of understanding and knowing your country. Indeed, to the remotest parts of every county. Join me, Linda Alela, every weekday from 6 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
diversity of Kenya's wildlife has garnered international fame.
This is pellets that we give to the tourists, the giraffes. We ration because we don't want the giraffes to eat too much of this. We want them to have more of the natural browse.
We may not always get the opportunity to go out to see the wildlife, but you'll never miss the opportunity to see it from the comfort of your couch.
All right, last laps of this very segment, gentlemen. We still are on that ICC conversation, and I think, Wakili, you were getting us somewhere.
Yes.
But again, on top of it, respond to the fact that, yes, there have been claims that, Africans should exit the ICC. Perhaps, I don't know whether we have...
Africans will want to exit any forum that is calling them to order.
And so you think we've not been treated with bias, like the...
No, we're not. We're not.
Or the cases there.
We're not being treated with bias.
The members.
I just go to what engineer began with. We idiotic and tribe mentality is the one that has made Africa to be what it is. We are not calling Africa to order. We do not want accountability. We do not want transparency. We do not want to follow the rule of law. We do not want to follow democracy even where democracy demands, even when people demand for it. We do not want to respect human rights. And then we are in a committee of nations. And being in a committee of nations, we cannot be just left to oscillate freely like free atoms. You remember in science, if just atoms just freely roam, the possibility is that an engineer is a scientist, they are going to collide. And when there is this collision of these atoms, you simply understand what will happen from your chemistry and your periodic table, And so my simple submission that can pass it over to engineer is that we must allow ourselves to be accountable. If you become the IG like Kome, you are not serving that government that has appointed you. You are serving the people
and he acknowledges
Kenya.
This in defense.
But you see, in his defense,
the very same people that they're actually paying even for all this that he is using to make sure that he
in his
protects
defense
them.
he says, I am being targeted because I'm a Meru.
Yes.
The other time they targeted another Meru. We are not, nobody is targeting you, Mr. Kome. We are only telling you, Mr. Kome, to tone down on your recently acquired arrogance or ignorance. So that then you are able to realize that you must become objective and impartial and serve the people of Kenya, and that you must be accountable to the people of Kenya. And I wish you can put that tweet.
And so you say that this is dead on arrival, so to speak?
I had hoped that the Wakili would be categorical about the nonsense of anybody suggesting ICC in our situation right now. Because we're talking about threatening Kome, taking her there, threatening IG police, taking them there, that there's a threshold, minimum threshold that will be achieved. And that minimum threshold is organized crime. To imagine that the Chief Justice, whatever you think about her, that she has an organized criminal gang that is going to kill, is really
does not warrant.
Very small, very small thinking. And I think what people are doing is political rhetoric at the point of drawing attention to the rest of the world to the situation that is happening in Kenya, and to be able to say that these people are not doing this, these people are not doing this, so we are on our own and cannot be that. It's basically calling on others to come and help us to be able to resolve the situation. You very well know that as an individual, either in your private life, you could have a mentor, but you've got to make decision yourself as to what needs to be done. As a people, and if you think about Africa, the reason they have talked about ICC is that crimes against humanity has been conducted across the world. The US have done it. They went into Afghanistan. For 20 years, they decimated that country at the insistence of trying to establish government and walked out. Those are crimes against humanity. It's organized crime against humanity. We have Russia now bombarding Ukraine. UK, in the Falkland Islands, you can talk about every country doing these things, but nothing happens to them. And that's why people are saying, look, ICC was made to be able to take charge of Africa. And we should not, as a people, allow anybody else to come and tell us what to do.
Okay.
We need to stand up and be counted. People who think that they can influence the society, if we're killing things that they can influence society, most of his time should be spent not thinking about what Ruto is not doing, but what he can do for himself. I think John F. Kennedy that said, the question that we must ask ourselves is not what the country can do for us, but what can we do for our country. If we think we know the path, are you doing in your small ways the things that leads this country towards the right direction? And every small action adds up to a big action. Nelson Mandela stood for something. For 27 years he was incarcerated. And because of that, I'm not belittling the fighting that was there, but it was so shameful for the apartheid government to keep him in for more than that time. It reached a point where they broke. Mother Teresa influenced the world by showing love to poor people in Calcutta. Now, all over the world, I don't think there's any funeral that is maintained by more heads of state than Mother Teresa. Are we doing those small things that can change things? Yes. Should we castigate government? Yes, we should. Should we call for Big Brother to come and help us? If you ask me, maybe. That is lack of self-esteem. It's saying that I've been unable to run myself, I need everybody to run for myself. Because why are we in this situation we are in? Truth be told, is because that Big Brother is sponsoring both sides of divide to ensure that we fight each other so that they can take our resources. It's not a secret. You're going to the colonizer, the person who ensures that you never settle down, to help you settle down. It will never happen.
Linda,
Wakili,
in my definition,
on that? Yes.
In my submissions, I give the scenarios when ICC will come in. I said if the state apparatus, the courts, and the criminal justice system is unwilling to prosecute, or they are unable to prosecute because of the unavailability of those apparatus. Unwillingness because of pronouncements like what Gachagua said. Crimes against humanity, you do not require to just have the scenario or the situation engineer is describing of network or that. The ICC statutes defines crimes against humanity as a widespread and systematic against the civilian population. And they also says that crimes against humanity do not necessarily need to happen during the times of war. Crimes against humanity will happen even in times of peace. You can look out this in the case of Jean-Paul Akayesu, 1998, ICTR, International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda. You can look at this in the case, in the Yugoslavian case, in the ICTY, International Criminal Tribunal for former Yugoslavia. You can also look at the definition in the case of Jean-Paul Bemba in the ICC. You can also look in the case of the Special Court of Sierra Leone when they were trying Taylor, and how they defined crimes against humanity. As long as there is a bit of systematic ways of doing things, systematic, you do not, and it has to have a leader. No, it's not systematic. It's not necessarily that you must have a leader. Individuals, according to the definitions, can be held liable for crimes against humanity. Why is somebody called Vladimir Putin being charged with crimes against humanity in Ukraine, and he's a president? He's being charged, one, as a commander-in-chief, but the charges should not stop there. They should even charge the individuals who committed those atrocities. If you look, and where are we coming from? We are coming from a tribunal which is called the Nuremberg Tribunal. The Nuremberg Tribunal is the mother of all these international criminal jurisprudence in terms of war crimes, crimes against humanity, they are just those, and crimes of genocide. Now there's another crime that has been added called the crimes of aggression. Now the Nuremberg Tribunal dealt with when they tried the generals and the officers who committed atrocities during the Second World War. they used to plead something called the defense of command responsibility. They would say, I am a soldier, I was commanded by my superiors to do this, and then they would be acquitted. Then the world realized that those guys committing atrocities are getting scot-free by this defense of command responsibility. So the court coined a doctrine called individual criminal responsibility, to the extent, therefore, that you'll be liable individually for the crimes,
of whether it's ordered from above,
for the crimes that you have committed.
Okay.
And then the world realized that most of these atrocities, some of them happen outside the war scenarios. Remember, during the war scenario, the Geneva Conventions are applicable. In absence of war, the 3 Geneva Conventions are not applicable. In the absence of the applicability of these Geneva Conventions, and atrocities are continuing to be committed and to happen, how do we deal with those perpetrators?
Becomes a problem.
That's where we come to the definition of crimes against humanity. I will only tell Koome, you listen to what Gachagua is telling you, but when the big brother comes, Gachagua will not even defend himself, because he himself will also have to defend himself.
Okay, and not defend.
We need to wake up
As we said,
we need to wake up to less English and more reality. That the definition is very simple. My friend has mentioned about 5